On today's show, Michael Porter Jr. is snubbed from the All-Star team despite his breakout season as the Nets' number one option. I'll tell you why the NBA's head coaches got these reserve selections wrong on today's episode of Locked On Nets.
You are Locked On Nets, your daily Brooklyn Nets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in to Locked On Nets right here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Now the number one sports podcast network. It's your team, the Brooklyn Nets, every single day. I'm your host, Erik Slater, Brooklyn Nets beat reporter for ClutchPoints.com. Thank you for making me your first listen of the day. The show is 100% free on all those great platforms. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. And on today's episode, we're going to be reacting to Michael Porter Jr.'s All-Star snub. He did not make the reserve selections, which came out on Sunday at 5 p.m. I have Lucas Kaplan coming on the show. We're going to break down everything that went into that decision. Let's go. And joining the show now, we got Lucas Kaplan of Nets Daily. And Lucas, we're here to talk about the All-Star team, which was fully announced today at 5 p.m. And Michael Porter Jr., much anticipation. A lot of people thought it was going to be the Nets' first All-Star selection since 2022. He does not make it. He gets the snub, and they announce the All-Star reserves in the East. It's Donovan Mitchell, Jalen Johnson, Jalen Duren, Scotty Barnes, Karl Anthony Towns, Pascal Siakam, Norman Powell. So we're going to give our reactions to this. My initial reaction to this is that I was somewhat surprised, and I think that the coaches who vote on the All-Star reserves, the NBA's head coaches, I think they got this one wrong. When you look at Michael Porter Jr. and you look at what he's done this season, he has been undoubtedly, a major positive for this Nets team. He's made them a lot more competitive for extended stretches than anybody anticipated. And I think if you just look at the numbers and you look at his impact on the team, I don't think there's really much of a question that he should be a reserve on this All-Star team. Like, you look at the numbers, 25.6 points, 7.3 rebounds, 3.2 assists on 48, 40, 82 shooting splits. So elite production, elite efficiency. He's had a noticeable impact on the Nets' ability to compete. I mean, they only have a negative 1.5 net rating during his minutes, and he's been one of the most important players to his team's individually ability to compete of anybody in the league. So I think that they got this wrong. We'll dive into the numbers. We'll dive deeper into it. But what is your takeaway? What was your reaction when you saw MPJ left off of this team?
It's not it's not quite as egregious as I thought initially. Like, I really looked at Pascal's case, and the main thing against him is the main thing against MPJ. It's the lack of team success. And so I kind of came away from it thinking that the Siakam inclusion, which I wasn't necessarily expecting, is fine. I still think it is probably a snub. By the way, notice that you blew right over the Nets getting blown out by 53 points today. That's why you're the host.
Yeah, we're gonna gloss over that, and we're gonna focus on the MPJ thing. We don't have MPJ is out for personal reasons. This game and the last, he had a death in the family, so prayers out to his family. But yeah, forgettable performance there in Detroit to close out a 5-game road trip.
But to your point, it dropped them to 1-9 without MPJ, and so quick math, they're 13-35. That would make them 12-26 with him. And then even again in those games, their net rating, what they do is way different when he's on the floor versus when he's off the floor. He's this clear driver of offense. I mean, it's kind of a textbook case for, hey, this is all-star impact. You're just on a really bad team. It's the opposite of what I would say is, again, I'm not a voter. Like, I didn't go so far into everything, but on the surface, it looks like it's the antithesis of like Karl Anthony Towns' case, where it's like, I'm not super sure you're having an all-star impact, but you are on a good team. And that's the one. Him and Norm, to me, are the ones where there's very, very clear argument. I initially thought Pascal's also played like 10 more games than him. Obviously, he has the institutional love from like the coaches and stuff, which shouldn't really matter, and we'll get into that. But even without that, I think that's fine. It's those two that I'm really side-eyeing.
Yeah, there's like a lot of underlying biases, I think, that go into these selections, obviously, even when you have people like coaches making them. But yeah, like when I go through, the reserves that made it, I think there were 4 locks. You'd say Donovan Mitchell, Jalen Johnson, Scotty Barnes, Jalen Duren. Like I was pretty confident all of those guys were making it. And those last 3 spots were up for grabs. And yeah, we have Kat, Pascal Siakam, Norman Powell, MPJ, maybe a few other people you could throw in that conversation beyond that. But yeah, like I think that the record, thing, the fact that MPJ is playing for a tanking team was really held against him here. And, that shouldn't be the case. I mean, it's not MPJ's fault that he's on a team that has a tanking agenda this season and really intentionally didn't put any talent around him. And despite that, he's been able to elevate them to that level. And I had the same takeaway as you, because I look at, some of the production things, and you could say like the same thing could be held against Pascal Siakam. But he's also had a noticeable impact on that team's ability to compete during his minutes. And I just, like, you look at the numbers, I said 25, pretty much 26, 7, 3, 48, 40, 82 shooting splits. There's only 5 NBA players this season averaging 25 points on that efficiency or better. And it's Jokic, Ant Edwards, KD, Jamal Murray, MPJ. And MPJ is the only one of those 5 who was not selected to the All-Star team. And then you look at the on-off impact. The Nets are 11.8 points worse per 100 possessions when MPJ is off the floor. That's the 8th highest mark in the NBA among all players to play over 700 minutes. And like I said, you could say, well, that's more of a factor of how bad the Nets are than MPJ being good. But that's not really the case, because the Nets have been competitive during MPJ's minutes. They have only a negative 1.5 net rating during his minutes. And I said that was the 8th highest among players to play over 700 minutes. One of the 7 ahead of him was Pascal Siakam. So Siakam has had a very big impact. He's had very good numbers. Like you, for me, it's really Karl Anthony Towns and it's Norman Powell. It feels like Kat just got he's on the Knicks. Like he's, perceived as one of like the best players in the league, like a top 20, 25 guy. And like, you look at him this season, like there's been a lot of outcry about, him not being a positive. You look at the Knicks 5-man lineup that's supposed to be their best lineup. It hasn't been a positive this season. I'm not saying that's all Kat's fault, but it's part of it. Like, he's not shooting as well as from 3. He's not shooting that well at the rim. We know the defensive limitations. Like, I disagree with that. And then the Norm Powell one, I think it's up for debate, but I just think that MPJ has had more of a noticeable impact on his individual team than those guys. And I just think that ultimately, I think the record and the fact that the Nets are a tanking team, I think that really came back to bite him. They held that against him, and I don't think that should be the case.
Yeah, he doesn't have especially you got to think after last year's playoffs, again, that institutional like respect from the coaches, not necessarily disrespect, but Pascal, you hear rightfully so, glowing reviews, like such, he does everything. He's been on great teams. He's won a championship and almost won another one, right? And so it felt like that was the thing that got him over the hump of being on a tanking team. And like, I think deservedly so. He's played almost every game. They're way better with him on than off. But like, MPJ has a lot of that in his corner. It's not like this is like a fluky 3-point shooting variance thing, right? Like, the reason the Nets are so much better with him on the court is almost all offensive. Of that 11.8 net swing that Erik mentioned, 9 points of it are on offense. And it'd be one thing, right, if it was like all defense and you're like, well, is MPJ really responsible for that? But he's so clearly, and credit to Jordy for helping him do this, put up like kind of primary creation responsibilities really efficiently. And to me, I really think he's a victim of the reserves not being voted on at the same time as the starters. Because I don't know if you know this, the results came out today. When were the coaches' ballots due? Do you know?
I think it might have been like around today. I don't
Right.
think it was that far in advance.
It definitely wasn't 3 weeks ago or when 2 weeks ago when the starters were announced, right? And when the starters were announced, he was 10th in the player rank, 9th in the fan rank, and 10th in the media rank. So inside the cut line, right? If 12 guys make it from each conference, that to me says like, if this was 2-3 weeks ago and he had a little bit more buzz and hype about what he was doing and the Nets were coming off that really strong December, maybe he makes it. Since then, the Knicks have turned it around a little bit, right? The Nets have gotten destroyed by 50 points in a couple of games, including today. And, that Knicks game MPJ did play in. So I think it felt like a victim of timing and circumstance. And I don't think it was the right choice. And, like the Nets offense with MPJ on, right? 117 offensive rating. The Miami Heat offense with Norm Powell on is, I believe, worse than that. It's about the same, lower net swing. But point being, like, Norm is a comparable case. I think you probably give it to MPJ, but with Cat and everything, I don't think it's the right call. I'm not sure it's like as egregious as Kawhi being snubbed, but I don't think it's the right call.
Yeah, and I don't think if MPJ, if the record and being on a tanking team is being held against him, I mean, I outwardly understand why that could be the case. I think it's almost more impressive what he's been doing without any kind of supporting cast around him. I mean, everything that he's doing offensively is pretty much being generated just based off of his skill set, his off-ball movement, his elite shot making, his improved ability to get downhill. I mean, I saw a stat. He's one of the most efficient players at the rim in the NBA this season. He's just doing a lot of things well. And the fact that he's playing with such a bad supporting cast and really a roster, frankly, that isn't NBA level at a lot of spots outside of him putting up this kind of efficiency, despite that, I think that should be more of a case for him. I mean, we've spoken about the shot diet, the three-point shot diet. He's shooting 40% from three while taking the most egregious diet of three-point shots I think that you're ever going to see. So the fact that he's been able to do that, I don't think that it should be held against him. And it seems like it ultimately was. But, I think that there is also an interesting conversation of the NBA's head coaches did vote on this. And Michael Porter Jr., we're, 4 days away from the trade deadline now. There is obviously a trade case for him. There should be a trade market. But with the NBA head coaches snubbing him from this All-Star selection, does that say anything about his market? Does that have an impact on whether you think he's going to be moved by February 5th? We'll get into all that when we continue Locked On Nets after a quick break. Guys, the big game is almost here, and there's no better way to cash in during America's biggest sporting event than Prize Picks, where it always feels good to be right. And this week, Prize Picks has a special max discount for the big game. Live in the app right now, Drake May needs just one passing yard for the max discount to win. Add another player to your lineup, and if your picks hit, you can cash in. Guys, Prize Picks is super simple to use. It takes no time to get started. The whole format is clean. Pick more or less on 2 to 6 player projections. It makes watching games even more fun because every drive and every stat matters. The social feeds feature is awesome. You can share lineups and even copy lineups from winners with one click. So download the Prize Picks app today and use code LOCKEDONNBA to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONNBA to get $50 in lineup after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks. It's good to be right. Guys, the NBA trade deadline is basically here, and we want to give you a free month of our new Everydayer Club to help you get ready. If you need a new group chat to keep up with the chaos, join ours. The Everydayer Club gets you access to a group chat on Discord just for Nets fans, plus national chats where you can hang out with fans from across the league. You also get ad-free versions of this show, and if you sign up by the trade deadline on February 5th, you can use code DEADLINE to get your first month free. Tap the link in the show notes to learn more. All right, coming back from the break on today's Locked On Nets episode, got Lucas Kaplan here. We are reacting to Michael Porter Jr.'s all-star snub, and there's obviously a trade conversation that is going to be had. It's been had, and it's going to continue to be had leading up to this February 5th trade deadline. And the all-star reserves are voted on by the NBA's head coaches, and they decided that Michael Porter Jr. was not worthy of it. They decided that he was not one of the 12 best players in the Eastern Conference right now. So I think that does bring in a conversation of, does that say something about Michael Porter Jr.'s trade value? And my opinion on this is, to me, I think that some Nets fans and some people who have been talking about this, I think that they've been analyzed or over projecting what Michael Porter Jr.'s trade value was going to be. Like, I've been seeing some people saying it's 2 first-round picks or bust for MPJ. Like, we're not selling him off for anything less than that. That's what they should get for him. Some people are even saying 2 first-round picks and like a prospect. And look, if the Nets want to set that as their price and not come off it and hold them until the offseason, that's fine. But I've been saying I do not think that Michael Porter Jr.'s trade value is 2 first-round picks. And you've talked about this with me in the past. I just don't think you look at it over the summer, and he was viewed as a distressed asset. Like maybe somebody viewed him as a neutral, value asset, but I just don't think that like you go from that to 2 first-round pick value, in that amount of time. And while he's been this good on the Nets, I just don't think that teams are going to be willing to give that up, especially given how valuable first-round draft capital is in this new CBA. And these head coaches not choosing him as one of the 12 best players in the Eastern Conference, I don't think it means that he doesn't have good trade value. I just think that it might be a little emblematic of like some people need to pump the brakes on what they think Michael Porter Jr.'s trade value is, amid this breakout.
I mean, it's interesting because like you think about all-star voting and it's like, well, fans, do we really want them to have a huge say in it? The media's fallible, as we know, get stuff wrong all the time. Players, you can't hand them the whole thing. And so it feels like, coaches deciding the reserves, which are the majority of all-star players, seems like the best way to do it. And I'm not saying that they're have bad intentions, but like I remember this past summer covering the WNBA, head coach of the New York Liberty, Sandy Brondello, is talking about a player she used to have now on Golden State, Kayla Thornton, who like I didn't really think was an all-star. And we asked her about it, and she said, man, like I love Kayla. It's great to see her thriving over there. Like I love her and I'll vote for her. Like I'll tell you that. And it's kind of giving the game away. It's like, oh, of course. It's like as smart as coaches are, it is still politics and like human emotions and friendships. And I'm not saying that's why MPJ didn't get it, but it's certainly not the number one measure of this is how people and front offices value players around the league, and their opinions are absolutely 100% empirical and only based on data. That being said, I agree with your initial point. Like it felt like the Warriors, because of so many specific things, the way they play, the money that they have on the bench in Kuminga, the fact that they are like, were at least before the Jimmy injury, like semi trying to contend, but have all of their first round picks going forward, almost all of them, that rare combination of things could make you think, okay, well, I could see them maybe giving up 2 firsts for MPJ, but it was such a specific cocktail that made the Warriors, hey, they could give up 2 firsts for them. Now that Jimmy's hurt, it's like, I don't know. The fact, like, valuing MPJ at 2 firsts just seems so context dependent, and I'm not sure there's a context anymore around the league that fits it. As for the coach's opinion, I don't know. I'm hesitant to tie those two things too much together, but it is an interesting part of it for sure.
Yeah, and I wonder like how much MPJ's reputation precedes him, when it goes to stuff like this, because you just said it, like it's not always just coaches looking at spreadsheets or empirical data or anything, like when they're making these kinds of decisions, or when, front office guys are making decisions like that. Like you talk about it, MPJ obviously does have the reputation for some of the things that he says off the court. I think going into this season, I think that the reputation would persist despite what he's done. Like he's had a little bit of reputation for, some of the things that he does on the court, some of the shots that he takes. Michael never swing the rock Porter, like all of that stuff. So I wonder how much that factors into a decision like this with the All-Star voting. Then you just brought up Golden State and the Warriors, and something that we've heard from some people who are, around that Warriors organization who report on it have said that they might not necessarily view MPJ as a fit just due to, despite him being a great three-point shooter, fitting into the way that they want to play, just not maybe as high on his feel for the game, the way that he's done some things in the past. And like, that could be a perception that persists around the league. Like you could say, like how many coaches or how many front office people do you think are looking at MPJ and saying he's putting up these numbers, it's great, like he's a ridiculous shot maker, he's making the right play sometimes, but he's taking a ridiculous shot diet on a 13-win Nets team and putting up big numbers. Like how much does that really translate to what we're trying to do? I think that he's still valuable, but like the question of how valuable, I think that question that front offices and coaches could be asking definitely factors into that equation.
And I think, who has a lot of respect within the Nets right now, especially from coaches, is Jordi Fernandez. And I think there's a case, not a case to be made, but you look at this offense and you look at MPJ's best nights, and so much of it is a product of his ridiculous shot-making talent. But a lot of it is a product of how well Jordy has designed an MPJ-centric offense, how well he's designed a half-court offense around a guy who really can't create separation with a live dribble. That's so hard to do in today's NBA. And so maybe it's not like coaches demeaning his skill set or devaluing it, but maybe it's a little bit of, man, the Nets have such a hyper-specific context for MPJ's production, and a mid-season trade, I'm not sure we can replicate that very easily other than a pin down here, a handoff here. And again, this is why the Warriors, right, made so much sense for MPJ, because you think about how many motion concepts have been a part of their offense for a decade plus now, and it's like, well, you wouldn't need to change it too much to get the best out of MPJ. But for the rest of the coaches in the league, I can definitely see them being like, yeah, he's great. Like, even if I don't think it's meaningless numbers, how much of it is a credit to Jordy and to MPJ? I think that is definitely a possibility when front offices are like, yeah, we're not getting this out of MPJ without at least some of this offense built into it, the design aspect of it.
Yeah, and I'm going to be interested to see what MPJ has to say about this, because we know, obviously, he's someone who speaks his mind. When he does get behind the mic, he says some crazy stuff. And when he talks basketball, he sounds pretty well-versed sometimes. And you look at it like, this is probably his best. I mean, I'm not going to predict what's going to happen moving forward, but assuming he's not on the Nets long-term, which I think is a fair, assumption or prediction to make, how many better chances is he going to make an all-star team than this one? I mean, watered down Eastern Conference, number one option. He's gone nuts. I don't know how many better chances he's going to be and he's going to have. And just talking about like him being snubbed, it's kind of crazy to me, because you look at the numbers that he's put up. You look at the impact he has had on them winning when they actually are, trying to win. Like, how much of a better start could he really have had, or how much of a better first half of the season could he have really had than this? Like, I'm not sure it could have gotten much better. I mean, 26 points on 48, 40, 85, and having a near neutral net rating during his minutes. Like, what else could he have really done to earn this all-star selection?
I don't know. He could have had a few like aura moments of like hitting game winners, honestly, that like stick in the mind of voters. Seriously, like, I don't know. Like, what if he hit like a game-winning buzzer-beating 3 in Denver? Like,
honestly, that is a fair thing to say, because you look at like the last few games, or you look at like the last 4 or 5 tight losses that the Nets have had. MPJ he's been bad in the clutch, but that's not his fault necessarily. Like these last 2 games, the Suns game and this game, he had 36 and 38 points. He's doing so much. He just runs out of gas down the stretch. But like you said, like, he hasn't really had those game-defining moments outside of the Bulls win, where he had that driving layup where they just like let him walk to the basket because they don't know how to defend a pin down. But like he hasn't really had those moments because he's struggled in the stretch. But I think that's been more of a product in the clutch. But I think that's been more of a product of him running out of gas, and then that's not having any other like on-ball creators outside of him in those moments.
Yeah, and then like, guys, when you come off a screen and like you're nailing threes, guys get so physical with you, and then they start trapping you, and he doesn't have live dribble counters, right, to be like, give me the ball, I'm just going to walk the ball up and get into an ISO. And again, like, the coaches voted LeBron over Kawhi. I know that's extenuating circumstances, and they made a bad decision, and maybe, how bad you think it is subjective, but like there's some narrative,
some NBA conspiracy theories with the LeBron
against the
thing. Like, we need him at All-Star Weekend. We don't need Kawhi here, who like doesn't ever say a word. Like, we'll get him into there. We know that they're already like trying everything they can to get anybody to care about this event. I think LeBron being there is pretty important to the league.
That's definitely part of it, or seems like it would be. But even like I was gonna bring up the narrative stuff in terms of their season, like maybe not helping MPJ, right? They start like as an embarrassment. Like they're 0-7. It's like, look at how not just bad, but like truly embarrassing they are. Oh, so much for MPJ, number one option. Then when they turn it around, what did you hear about in December? It was all about the defense. It was all about the defensive rebounding. Number one defense in December. And when you and I know, when visiting coaches would come to Barclays at the start of January, they would say, man, they've been playing well, number one defense or whatever in the last month. Like, it was a thing that kind of really made its way around league circles. And now they're getting blown out again. It's kind of embarrassing. obviously MPJ got a lot of credit during that, but when you look at the story of Brooklyn's season, there's not a ton that I'm just trying to think of things. And even when I said earlier about Pascal having institutional respect, MPJ has won a title as well, and he was really good then. And maybe it's just him paying penance for some podcast appearances in the summer, like who knows, man.
I think you made a point before that I might agree with, of the sense that, the Nets have recent losses. They had a 56-point loss or whatever it was against the Knicks, and then they had the 54-point loss against the Clippers. MPJ played in both of those games. So maybe that's like some recency bias that kind of sticks in the mind of people, things along those lines. And then look, I think that the coaches got this wrong. I don't think that, Siakam or Norm Powell, and I guess Kat, you can make the argument. I don't think it's like an egregious snub, but it's definitely a snub in my opinion. And I think that he did have what it takes to make it. But we are 4 days away from the NBA trade deadline. Michael Porter Jr. remains outside of Giannis Antetokounmpo, one of the top players on the market. So what do we think about how that's going to play out? How is this Giannis situation impacting it? Just what do we think is going to be the Nets' focus and position heading into the trade deadline here? We'll talk about that when we close out Locked On Nets after a quick break. Guys, there's nothing like being in an NBA arena. The crowd, the energy, the moment. Getting tickets, though, that part hasn't always been so simple. That's why Game Time has become the go-to app for scoring tickets fast without the hassle. It puts the advantage back where it belongs, with the fans. I pulled up the Game Time app, picked an upcoming NBA game, and had the tickets locked in within minutes. Love seeing the all-in price up front, no surprise fees at checkout. Being able to see the view from your seat before buying makes the decision easy, and zone deals stood out. Choose the section, Game Time picks the seats, and you save big. Great last-minute options, too, with NBA tickets showing up at solid prices. So take the guesswork out of buying NBA tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. That's code LOCKEDON for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. And remember, it's gametime.co, not .com. This episode is sponsored by BetterHelp. February can be a lot. Flowers, candy, stuffed animals, and so much talk about relationships. And it can honestly feel like everyone else has it all together in their love life. But here's the truth. Whether you're married, dating, single, or just focusing on you, most people are still figuring it out. And no matter where you are in your romantic journey, therapy can help you find your way. It can help you get clear on what you want, what feels heavy, and how to take some pressure off yourself. Guys, it's easy to assume everyone else has the perfect relationship, but most people are working through something. Therapy can help you recognize patterns that might be weighing relationships down. It can help you communicate better, set healthier boundaries, and stop carrying everything alone. And even if you're not in a relationship right now, therapy can help you feel more confident in what you want moving forward. BetterHelp is licensed therapists in the U.S., and they do the initial matching work for you so you can focus on your goals. And if you want to switch therapists, you can do so at any time. Sign up and get 10% off at BetterHelp.com/LockedOnNBA. That's BetterHelp.com/LockedOnNBA. All right, coming back from the break, closing out today's Locked On Nets episode, got Lucas Kaplan here. And Lucas, it's February 1st right now. We're less than 4 days away from the NBA trade deadline, and Michael Porter Jr., he remains one of the top names that perceivably could be on the move. The Giannis Antetokounmpo situation has seemingly ground the trade market to a halt, unless you're talking about Duop Reith and DeAndre Hunter and our old friend Dennis Schroeder and some of those guys. But
Vit Krejci.
Vit Krejci, yeah, sorry. I didn't want to botch that pronunciation. But yeah, there haven't been like the most blockbuster deals outside of Dennis Schroeder playing on like his 11th team in the last 8 seasons. But yeah, the MPJ situation going into the deadline, I mean, I think I'm at a point now where it wouldn't surprise me either way if he gets moved, if he is on the team past the trade deadline. But at this point, it definitely seems more likely that he's going to be on the team past the trade deadline. And I think that there's a number of factors in that. One of the main ones being that the Giannis Antetokounmpo situation is holding everything up around the league. And I think that the most likely outcome there is that the Bucks hold him until the summer. And if that is the case, you're going to have a lot of teams that aren't going to want to trade multiple assets for Michael Porter Jr. because they're going to want to get to the offseason and see like, hey, could we be in the mix for this? That takes away a lot of suitors. And even if there is like a suitor or two that are left over that would be interested in MPJ and aren't in the Giannis market, like you want those other teams available also to kind of have the bidding, be amongst a bunch of teams. So I think that that's a big holdup. I also think that, there is a conversation that it might make more sense to move him in the offseason when more teams will have more stuff to pick and there will be more clarity around the league. So that's how I'm seeing that. I think that it looks like it's becoming more likely that he's going to be on the market past the deadline. And I did see some people on Nets Twitter talking about, Brian Windhorst was on NBA Today saying that I haven't heard that Michael Porter Jr. is on the market. Like, that's news to me if he is. Like, I'm going to wait for Shams to tweet that. And I'm like, all right, Wendy, like I think it's pretty clear that MPJ is available to be had on the trade market. Like, I don't think what are we doing here? Like, yeah, MPJ's untouchable for the 13-35 Nets.
Listen, when you can keep a 13-win team together, you have to do it. I don't know how many teams are going to be factoring Giannis into their plans in terms of a team that is, again, I keep bringing them up. Maybe it's just the Warriors that you could see them pivot from an MPJ pursuit to a Giannis pursuit. But I think a lot of teams, right, like are seeing MPJ as a nice complementary piece to a couple stars or a star. And, they see Giannis as the star, like the last move or like the real culminating move, and then you fill in the roster around it. So I don't know how many teams are going to be reluctant to trade assets for MPJ that would also want to be in on Giannis. But when you get to the summer, right, I do think MPJ, if I had to guess, would be here through the deadline. That Sean Marks has shown that he will wait out the offer that he wants. And when you get to the summer, 2033 picks come into play in the trade market. You also get, some more money off the books. You also get maybe a team like Houston or whatever, has a tough first round loss. Like, teams come off playoff losses. Detroit, what if they lose in the second round? All that stuff can happen. So for a lot of reasons, I do think an MP trade in the summer might produce a better trade market, even if it's the Giannis sweepstakes summer.
Yeah, I mean, if we're looking at the team that makes the most sense for MPJ, that probably isn't going to be in the Giannis market and it could perceivably do it before the deadline. It's a team that the Nets just lost to by 53 points, the Detroit Pistons. Like, they're the team. I've said this before. I said this when I did an episode outlining my most likely or most realistic destinations. Like, are the Pistons really going to go into this Eastern Conference playoffs with Tobias Harris, Asar Thompson, and Duncan Robinson as their perimeter guys alongside Cade Cunningham? Like, maybe they think Cade and Duren are just enough and those guys can be fine and they can make it out of the East. Like, I wouldn't fault them or say it's crazy to not do something, at this deadline, but I would say, it definitely could make sense for them to make a move. And I think another thing that might need to be said is, like, we talked about the Giannis situation and teams, who wants to go after Giannis? Are they in the MPJ market? How is that factoring it in? It must be said, I'm anticipating an eye roll through the screen by Lucas. The Nets could be in that conversation for Giannis Antetokounmpo and Michael Porter Jr. matching salary. Maybe there's some universe where they could keep him and he could be the number 2 alongside Giannis. Like, we can't just discount them and put them out of that conversation and say, like, that the Nets aren't one of these teams that is monitoring that situation closely. We know they probably are. And also, MPJ is a big factor in that, whether as a piece for the trade or the guy who could be here alongside Giannis.
Yeah, I won't give you an eye roll. I mean, it is true. I don't think you can count them all the way out. I do think the Giannis, Danny Wolf, front court, Brooklyn Nets will be even more of a Sisyphean task for Giannis next year to, like, drag the Nets to relevancy.
Sisyphean?
Yeah,
is that
man.
what you just said? God,
yes.
that might be the most intense word ever used on this
podcast. Well,
I have no idea what that means, and I have a pretty good vocabulary, I like to think.
Come on, man. The parable of the ancient Greek, Sisyphus pushes the rock up the mountain, and every time he almost gets to the top, it rolls back on him.
You lost me. This is Lucas. Like, Lucas is the resident numbers guy. He's not helping his, like, I'm not a nerd case right now.
Hey,
but
well, listen, when you were talking about Giannis to the Nets, you got to expand the playbook.
Apropos. That's a word.
That is true. And anyway, it's not happening. However, Giannis and MPJ, the fact that you would, like, maybe have to make MPJ a salary filler or a salary match for Giannis they would just have so much work to do in the offseason that they would have. I'll give you another one, pretty much meaning the same thing, a Herculean task in terms of creating a championship-worthy roster. But I think you're right. I don't think they're out. Like, we know they love Giannis. They love them some Giannis, and they would love to get in on that.
Yeah, I think the way that I'll close this out is that Lucas just said it's not happening, and it seems like doesn't agree that it would be a wise move. So I think that on like Kalashi Sports right now, that should increase the odds of it happening by a good amount. So we'll see how that plays out, Lucas. I want to do a whole episode with you talking about the Giannis thing, because I don't think at all that you can rule the Nets out of this. And I think that they are going to be a factor just by the amount of assets they have and a lot of other factors going into that. But we'll talk about that more, hopefully, on a future episode this week. We'll also have, hopefully, an episode about what the Nets do or don't do at the trade deadline. But Nets got a day off. They're going to be back at Barclays on Tuesday against the Lakers. So, yeah, we'll definitely have you back on in the coming days. But I appreciate you taking the time, as always. That does it for today's episode of Locked On Nets. Hope you guys enjoyed the talk with Lucas. If you do not already, make sure to subscribe to Locked On Nets on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts, whether Apple Podcasts or Spotify. If you enjoy my content, take a second right now, smash that like button, leave a comment, leave a 5-star review. Anything you can do to engage is much appreciated. The Nets got a day off on Monday. Then we'll be back in action on Tuesday at Barclays Center against the Lakers. So I'll have coverage of all that and more when I'm back tomorrow talking more Brooklyn Nets basketball.